करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः।
The next poem was The Pond.
The pond. There was a round pond and a pretty pond too. About it white daisies and violets grew, and dark weeping willows that stood to the ground dipped in their long branches and shaded it round. A party of ducks to this pond would repair to feast on the green water weeds that grew there. Indeed, the assembly would frequently meet to discuss their affairs in this pleasant retreat. Now the subjects on which they were wont to converse, I'm sorry I cannot include in verse, for though I've oft listened in the hopes of discerning, I won't. It's a matter that baffles my learning. One day, a young chicken that lived thereabout stood watching to see the ducks pass in and out, now standing tail upward, now diving below. She thought of all the things she should like to do so. So the poor silly chick was determined to try. She thought it was as easy to swim as to fly, though her mother had told her she must not go near. She foolishly thought there was nothing to fear. My feet, wings and feathers for aught that I see, as good as a duck's are for swimming, said she. Though my beak is pointed as their beaks are round, is that any reason that I should be drowned? Why should I not swim then as well as a duck? I think I shall venture and even try my luck. For, said she, spite of all that her mother had taught her, I am really remarkably fond of the water. So, in this poor, ignorant animal flew, but soon found her dear mother's cautions were true. She splashed and she dashed and she turned herself round and heartily wished herself safe on the ground. But now 'twas too late to begin to repent. The harder she struggled, the deeper she went. And when every effort had vainly been tried, she slowly sunk down to the bottom and died. The ducks, I perceived, began loudly to quack when they saw the poor fowl floating dead on its back, and by their grave gestures and looks, 'twas apparent they discoursed on the sin of not minding a parent. Jane Taylor.
Jane Taylor is the same poet who has authored or co-authored the famous rhyme that we all feel happy singing all the time when we were child, Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. Fabulous. Similarly, in this very simple poem, she has conveyed a very effective message. You will find that in many of these books which are written later by Swamiji, particularly The Fall of the Human Intellect, this poem finds a place. This is talking about the importance of thinking or intellect, but what do most people do and how do they analyze and use their intellect, and what is the type of intellect that they have, that is very clearly given in this poem. We'll see as we go along. Of course, the first three stanzas is only talking poetry about what is happening. So the story is simple, that a chick is there and it is wanting to play in the pond like the ducks, though her mother has said you do whatever you want to do, but don't go near water. But the chick is fascinated about the water. It is seeing the duck's tail is up and down, all those things. And so in that fascination, she says, she argues to herself as to why she should not venture into the pond. And she gives an argument. We'll see that. Based on that argument, to herself, she is convinced that there is nothing to fear. And then ventures into the water. There, one more line is very important. There she says, I am really remarkably fond of water. And once she is inside there, the game is over. I mean, she is going to die now. She tried very hard to extricate herself, but with every hard effort, she only sank down to the bottom and died. And then the ducks were again looking at this poor fawn. This is the story. What is the essential message here? We'll see that. There was a round pond and a pretty pond too. About it the white daisies and violets grew, and dark weeping willows that stood to the ground, dipping their long branches and shaded it round. So it is talking about describing the pond here. A party of ducks to this pond would repair to feast on the green water weeds that grew there. Indeed, the assembly would frequently meet to discuss their affairs in this pleasant retreat. So it was a round pond, and is describing the pond. There are white daisies and violets, all those flowers were there. Dark weeping willows refer to the trees that are there around the pond, whose branches will come down, near the water, and it was shading the pond from all sides. So to this pond, ducks would always come for like a resort. They will be there because it gave them a lot of food also, green water weeds that grew there. In that assembly, they would frequently meet and discuss their affairs in a pleasant retreat. That's the poetic way of explaining, things. That is saying that they will discuss various things there. And the poet goes on to say, now the subjects on which they were wont to converse, I am sorry I cannot include in the verse, for though I have oft listened in the hopes of discerning, I own it's a matter that baffles my learning. Sorry, I cannot include that in my poem here, because I have tried to listen very carefully to whatever they speak, the ducks, but it baffles my learning. They are speaking very high philosophy. So you have to only enjoy the poetry like that it is talking about. So in fact, there is a sarcastic remark about what people generally have in the meetings and discussions. That's what it is, like ducks quacking only. All the time they keep on making some sound, but what really they say, I am sorry, I don't understand. It baffles my learning. It is too high for me. So it is a very sarcastic remark on how generally people collect together and meet and everything like that. The equation is that of the ducks doing that. This poem is not about ducks, so it is just a general thing that the poet begins with. The situation or the stage is set now. One day a young chicken that lived thereabout, a young chicken is there, stood watching to see the ducks pass in and out. The ducks are going inside the water and coming out. The chicken is watching this. Now standing tail upward, now diving below. She thought of all the things she should like to do so. So it got fascinated, it got tempted. It is so attractive for the chick that the ducks are playing like this in water, and the chick is imagining that the chick also should do all these things, play like this in the water. So the poor silly chick was determined to try. She thought it was as easy to swim as to fly. And again, this is not an essential message of the poem, but we can derive that each and everybody has got their own certain talents and certain characteristics and features. You need to hone those skills and stick to that. You must not venture into those areas which is not in your area of expertise. Okay. Sattvic intellect is that which can distinguish what ought to be feared and what ought not to be feared. So a person with a real intellect, real thinking will be very careful before he ventures into anything. This is where I need to do, and that let there be no fear there. Let me do my duty here. His intellect will clearly say, this is one area we should not venture at all. Somebody is saying that you do Hawala transaction, black money, you will get more money and other things. Immediately the intellect should caution, no, I should not enter that. So what ought to be feared has to be feared. On the other hand, a tamasic intellect has no such this thing. It may be even very clear about the opposite, that is tamasic intellect. So here we are talking about the intellect of a chick. Swamiji refers to this as chick's intellect. What does the chick's intellect do? So now the chick is very much determined to get inside the water. So she thought it was as easy to swim as to fly. The chicken can fly but it cannot swim. But it thought it is very easy to swim also. This is very important. Though her mother had told her she must not go near, she foolishly thought there was nothing to fear. See, you can at least not blame the chick if it had not got any warning or caution. But very clearly the mother hen has given a warning to the chick that it must not do certain things. And what does the mother represent here? The mother represents the Shastras. In chapter 16 of Bhagavad Gita, towards the end, Lord Krishna says, Tasmat Shastram Pramanante Karya Karya Vyavastitau. Karya and Akarya. What ought to be done and what ought not to be done. Which again comes Karya Akarya in Sattvic intellect also. What ought to be done and what ought not to be done. A Sattvic intellect clearly distinguishes. On what basis? It is the basis is given on the Shastras. And a correct Guru will interpret the Shastras correctly and tell you if you are not clear as to what you should do and what you should not do. Till the time that you grow a powerful intellect and can decide for yourself, you ought to listen to them. There's no other way. If you don't have intellect and you don't have the humility to even listen to those who have intellect, you will meet the same fate as the chick meets in this poem. So here the mother represents that superior intellect, that Shastras or Guru, whoever is actually saying what is the right thing for you. Though her mother had told her she must not go near, she foolishly thought there was nothing to fear. What is there to fear? This is not different from most of our experiences. Before we venture into certain things like certain sensual indulgences and other things, we think there is nothing to fear, isn't it? We have known even certain celebrities who get caught. Of course, in India, punishments may or may not come, but they indulge in that youthful pride or something. They may take a gun and shoot somebody, or drive the car in a rash way, and they'll get into problem, or hold some AK-47 and another rifle which they ought not to do. They think there is nothing to fear. I can take care. This sort of a thing. You must be very, very cautious. She foolishly thought there was nothing to fear. And now the chick is arguing for itself. My feet, wings and feathers for aught that I see, that anything that I see, that's what it means. As good as the ducks for swimming, said she. See here, carefully analyze. And the important line is, that is what is given in italics here. Though my beak is pointed, as their beaks are round, is that any reason that I should be drowned? If you only take this particular line and go along with the analysis and reasoning of the chick, you will obviously concur with the chick. What is the difference between duck and the chick? It is thinking. My beak is pointed, beak of a chick is pointed, and the beak of the duck is round. Is that any reason why I will drown in the pond? The answer is no. So if that sentence alone is given to you, you will also go along with the chick and say, come on, go ahead. And that's what the chick said. But before that, what does the chick do? It is analyzing all aspects. It is not really analyzing, it is brushing aside all aspects. But it takes into consideration as to all aspects. My feet, wings and feathers. Okay, even if you discount wings and feathers, which are also a little different, but take away that. It says my feet. What is it that makes the duck swim in water? Is that it has got a webbed feet. The toes or the fingers in that is connected. There is a webbed feet there. With that it is able to push the water and it is able to swim. That is the essential difference. But here in the analysis of this chick, it is taking into consideration the feet, the wings, the feathers, everything as it were, but it is not really analyzing. It is saying for the sake of saying. This is how most of us take an argument and do. We don't go into the depth and merits of any argument. We superficially see something and brush everything together under the carpet then. That's all. And then we pick up something which is not connected at all. And based on which we build our argument and say, though my beak is pointed as their beaks are round, is that any reason that I should be drowned? The answer is no. Now the question is, what makes us brush aside everything and get into this analysis? This is the mind's sort of conditioning. It has no real intellect. This is not intellect. Intellect is thinking. Intellect is, it apparently looks like intellect, reasoning and thinking, but it is not intellect. The intellect, as it were, is held hostage because intellect is not developed. It is held hostage within the periphery of the mind. So therefore, within that circle, the intellect is doing something. This cannot be understood or taken as real thinking. Now, why does it happen? It happens because, why should I not swim? Then as well as that, I think I shall venture and even try my luck. For, said she, again he is saying, spite of all that her mother had taught her, it has all the knowledge. It has all the lessons from the mother. All that is now either forgotten, all that is now covered, all that is completely submerged because I am really remarkably fond of the water. Underline this line also, it's very important. The mind is now completely obsessed with entering the water. I am really remarkably fond of water. That has taken over everything. Once that has taken over everything, your intellect is forced to reason within this circle only. And in this circle, it will only justify certain things. So whatever we use the intellect within the periphery of our small circle to justify cannot be called as reasoning, thinking, or whatever aspect that you want to talk about of intellect. It is not real intellect. If at all, you can use it as a euphemism. You say chick's intellect. That's all it is. It is chick's intellect. Chick's intellect is no intellect, or rather something to do with creating a negative aspect of it. Tamasic it is. Like that it is. So chick's intellect, it is saying that my beak is pointed and their beaks are round. Is that any reason why I should be drowned? The answer is no. Then why should I not swim? Let me go and try my luck. Because spite of all that her mother had taught her, I am really remarkably fond of water. I am extremely sold out. That's all. My mind has already fallen into it. Having got into it completely, there is no question of analysis or reason. Now, therefore, what is reason? What is analysis? How should we even think? How should we even reason? Let us all be clear that all of us have various passions, liking, personal choices, and these have been there right from birth, and a groove has been set into our system right from our childhood. If a person has to argue about, let us say, Ram Mandir, Ayodhya case, or talking about whether the old system of Hindus was very casteist in nature and whether there was Aryan race or whatever, all these things, if you have to analyze, you have to understand, you have to go by the history, truth, etc. That, let us say, I am born from a certain community and I have grown up in certain families, certain societies, certain values that are put inside me right from childhood, I cannot wish it away. In each and every thing that is given, any idea that is given, any subject that is given, anybody gives a lesson or discourse or anything also, I will only view it colored through my already set notions. And this is applicable for all. Because the groove that is set in the mind and the emotional connection that you have to it is very, very strong. You cannot wish it away. What we mean by intellect is to set aside those emotions and to view and analyze something objectively. It is not possible to do it 100%, but to do it as much as possible is the real purpose of the intellect. If the chick had only maybe taken a guidance of somebody, or it is able to analyze objectively, it will compare the feet and the feet. It will compare the wings and the wings. And once you compare the feet and the feet, you know that my feet is not as webbed as the duck's feet. I will analyze that first. But the chick has not analyzed that because it is now completely emotionally caught up in this thought that it should enter the water. So, when we talk about thinking, decision making, analysis of the intellect, however powerful the emotions are and however good the emotions are also, you need to set it aside and take a measurement afresh. Though it is difficult, that capacity in you to do it will determine the capacity of your intellect to reason. This is the essential lesson in this poem. I am really remarkably fond of water. So within the periphery of the mind, the intellect is asked to reason or asked to justify the mind's passion here. So in this, the poor ignorant animal flew. So our decisions are made like this based on the emotions of the mind. You make a choice of action, but soon found her dear mother's cautions were true. No sooner you venture into things like this, immediately you recall what the mother has said, what the guru has said, what the shastras has said, and what you really probably will know also, which has been set aside by these emotions. She splashed and she dashed and she turned herself round and heartily wished herself safe on the ground. It is too late. The effect of that action has begun to take place. She thought she'd be safe on the ground, but now it is too late. But now it was too late to begin to repent. The harder she struggled, the deeper she went. And this is another small lesson here. When you are caught up in some problem, the more you try there, it is more out of desperation. So even when you are trying to solve a problem, whether it is related to some taxation, this, that, something in your office, so many things are running in your mind, you need to actually withdraw yourself, calm your mind, and then only think about it. Maybe sleep that night and start afresh tomorrow, something you do. At that moment, you try harder and harder, you will create further and further problems there. It's like getting into that quagmire like this only. The harder she struggled, deeper she went. And when every effort had vainly been tried, she slowly sunk down to the bottom and died. Very sad, very tragic. Then the poem concludes by saying the ducks I perceived began loudly to quack when they saw the poor fowl floating dead on its back. And by their grave gestures and looks, it was apparent they discoursed on the sin of not minding a parent. So the ducks were quacking again, looking at this dead body, dead chick. And the poet says, what probably the ducks would have discussed. From their gestures and looks, it was very clear that they were discussing what will happen to you that if you don't listen to your parent. So, the Shastras are objectively giving. What will the Rishis do? What will the Guru do? What will the Shastras do? They are giving everything for you, for your welfare. And then they shrug the shoulders. They helplessly watch you going through certain things in life. What else can they do? They have tried everything to prevent, but in spite of it, if you go by your mind's decision based on the strong emotions and other thing. So the lesson here is the mind makes the decisions on the basis of what gives me immediate joy or sorrow, pleasure or pain. So I feel very pleasurable when I am in water. That's what the mind feels. So the decision is based on pleasure and pain. On the other hand, intellect makes the decision based on right and wrong. So mind decides based on pleasure and pain. Intellect's decision is based on right and wrong. If you don't have the intellect, at least you must have that awareness that I am not able to think properly. That is the problem. See, the problem of that lack of awareness or tamas is not just ignorance, it is ignorance of ignorance. So we do not know that we don't have an intellect. So therefore there is probably no other way. So time and again it is better to humble ourselves. If we are not capable of reasoning, take the guidance of some superior intellect, could be your guru, somebody who is objective, somebody who will analyze it for you, and then take the guidance and act accordingly till the time you build your intellect. This is a fascinating poem. We will again conclude with Swamiji's commentary here.
A chick watched the ducks enjoying themselves swimming in a pond. She was obsessed with a desire to swim with them. Her mother warned her not to enter the pond. Unmindful of the warning, the foolish chick reasoned to herself, "My beak is pointed and their beaks are round. Is that any reason why I should be drowned?" Arguing thus, she ventured into the water. Soon the poor chick found her mother's cautions true. She struggled in vain, sank to the bottom and died. The poet draws the parallel to human fallacy. You do not heed scriptural injunction. Your mind is obsessed with desires. Your intellect is at times held hostage by the powerful desires of your mind. The intellect then reasons within the periphery of the mind's desires. In this world, people hardly use their intellect or use it to justify what their mind demands. Either way, actions are led by the mind's whims and fancies. It is of prime importance that you develop your intellect. A strong intellect alone can control the mind's desires and direct actions properly. Until then, you must seek wise counsel. If you fail to follow either, you will expose yourself to the fate of the chick.
Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.